Hi, my name is Philip Valenta, and today I'm going to talk to you about the differences between using AMD versus Intel processors in a desktop build. Intel was founded in 1968, with Intel being founded a year later in 1969. Both of these companies shared many technologies through licensing that in the end shaped the way that computing industry processes information at the processor level. In the end, AMD and Intel-based machines will perform the same tasks as each other, with the only big difference between the two being performance and price. For most of its corporate life, AMD has been behind Intel in the performance market. However, in 2003, this changed when AMD introduced the x86 64-bit instruction set. This introduction gave AMD a big speed boost, coupled along with a technology called hypertransport, which allows direct memory access for the processor instead of having to go through a separate memory controller like an Intel processor. This direct connect architecture allowed AMD to gain a significant speed boost over Intel. This technology is also something that Intel just recently introduced with their new Core i-series processors. These days, on the average, Intel-produced processors cost more than a comparable spec AMD processor, with the difference between the two being performance. However, the performance difference the average user would not be able to notice. Concentrating on the desktop builder enthusiast market, AMD and Intel are sometimes split down the middle as to what a builder would use when building a desktop computer. However, the use of an AMD processor in a build is typically used as a great cost-saving measure, allowing for improvement on other computer components that will allow for the computer to perform better as a whole. When building a computer, the importance of performance per dollar is extremely important to most builders, almost always affecting the builder's choice in regards to the choices of their components. Take, for instance, Intel's Extreme Edition i7 6-core processor, priced at just under $1,000. This being obviously Intel's flagship chip. Now take AMD's Phenom 2 X6 6-core processor, priced at $229. While the Intel will outperform AMD's flagship, the cost difference of over $700 is very prohibitive for most builders, since the AMD's performance is only about 10 to 15% less compared to Intel's. So with this information, a builder's choice to go with AMD can only be a positive one. Now, when building a computer, the first decision that a builder will choose is what processor to get. Once that choice is made, then a motherboard, graphics card, and RAM can all be selected. Deciding on an AMD processor will allow a builder to have more money in their budget to buy a higher-end motherboard, graphics card, and RAM compared to buying an Intel processor. Selecting an AMD-based processor obviously means selecting an AMD-compatible motherboard. Now, the cost of these AMD boards compared to Intel are on the average $20 to $200 cheaper than compared to an Intel board. A AMD board also has many clear advantages over some Intel boards. The first of these advantages is obviously the cost. Buying a high-end AMD board for your AMD processor is about $200 less than compared to a high-end Intel board. So right off the bat, a builder can save a couple $100s to either buy a higher-end component or just to save money in their budget. Another feature is that all AMD boards natively support SATA 3, which provides multiple 6 gigabit ports for SATA connections to hard drives and/or solid-state disks. Intel boards currently require that a separate controller chip be placed on the motherboard to have the coupled SATA 3 ports, increasing the total cost of the motherboard. So with these cost savings when building a computer, the builder would be able to spend more money on a graphics card and/or RAM, since they save money on both the processor and motherboard while sacrificing only a couple percentage points in performance. If a person in the end is really trying to save money when building a computer, then that user would go with the build that has onboard graphics. Onboard graphics simply means that the motherboard has the graphics chip built right onto the motherboard. This is an area where Intel is behind big time compared to AMD. Intel's Graphics Media Accelerator provides extremely poor graphics compared to the AMD graphics solution. So in conclusion, the cost differences between an AMD and Intel processor makes AMD a much better choice, especially in today's economy where we Americans want the best bang for a buck that we can get. The small hit in performance to save $100 or to get a much more better performing part aside from the processor is a big gain for most computer builders. So Most people these days will at first consider Intel due to Intel's heavy advertising campaign, but people don't realize that AMD is also another choice in the processor market. Buyers of AMD products have also almost never been disappointed in their selections. I personally have built multiple systems using AMD chips and motherboards, and in all of the builds I've done, I've never been disappointed in the total cost of the systems, and have been extremely happy with the overall performance of the system. Most builders like myself, after building one AMD-based system, will continue to build AMD systems due to their affordability and performance when compared to an Intel system. These AMD chips, again, like I said, while the performance is not enough to warrant the increased cost of an Intel system, the extreme high cost of an Intel system makes a lot of people shy away from Intel and instead go buying an AMD. Despite the fact that AMD, while it has a smaller performance, less performance than Intel, the amount of money you save will in the end make it a much better buying choice than compared to Intel.